Welcome to the Not All There podcast. I'm your host, Chad. I'm happy you're here. Today, I have a really great conversation with a close friend of mine about the topic of relapse and his experience with relapsing. Sean, who will be with us, has a saying that he uses, and I love it, that he has enough 30-day chips to open a casino. So that should give you a heads up of what we're getting into. I laugh because you have to. In sobriety, in recovery, you got to get to a point where you can laugh, because if you can't laugh at the ridiculousness of what's going on around you, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You got to take your sobriety seriously, and the rest of it is gravy. Okay. Now, back to the topic of relapse. Some people look at relapse as a bad thing, as a failure, and it's not bad, and it's not a failure. It's part of the growth of your sobriety. Okay? It's hard fucking work to get and to stay sober. It's hard fucking work to ask for the help. Okay? So it takes you some time to get your head square. And, you know, things happen. If you don't put your sobriety and your recovery at the top of your list, you're going to have some challenges, and those challenges can lead to slips, and those slips are, you know, what we call a relapse. And some of the best insight and knowledge that I have gained in my sober life about living and fulfilling a sober life has come from people who have relapsed. They've seen it, man. They've come in, they've gotten cleaned up, they've seen the light, and life happens, and that an addict mind of ours gets in the way, and they have a slip, and then they get to see what the dark side's like. And they come back, they make it back, and they tell us, hey, look, take it from me, you're better in here than out there. That's what I have to say about that. It's very important to me to spread this knowledge to you, because it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to ask questions. And I am here to share with you what it looks like, what it kind of feels like. And if you know somebody close to you, a spouse, a partner, cousin, brother, coworker, you feel might be struggling with addiction, send them this way, because it's hard to ask for the help. It is. Deep down, you know you have a problem, but you don't want to admit it to yourself, and you certainly don't want to admit it to anyone around you, even though we are always the last one to find out how bad our addiction actually is. Send them over here. I like to have a good time. I like to be honest and sincere and serious, and offer a soft place for someone to come and land and listen. If you have questions, you want to reach out to me, I'll give it again at the end of the podcast, but my email address is notalltherepod@gmail.com, notalltherepod@gmail.com. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Sean. All right, welcome in. I am here with my friend Sean. And Sean's on the show today. We're going to have a conversation about a pretty important topic in recovery and sobriety life. And it's almost considered a bit of a taboo, I guess. But the topic is relapse. And when I asked Sean to come and have this conversation with me, he said, well, that is my speciality. So I thought, well, why not? I have an expert. So Sean, thanks for coming. Tell me a little bit about how you got here.
Came right down, sure. So yeah, relapse. You know, I think here's the good news about a lot of relapse is part of that's only possible just because I got a fairly good early start at sobriety.
How were you?
Well, the first time, so when I was 16, the judge sentenced me to 2 meetings a week for a year.
Ooh, what'd you do?
It was a long and varied list that included a number of moving violations and some other things. But like I said, there's a big, long family history of alcoholism, and I have a lot of older brothers and sisters, and it's deep in the family. So, I knew there was a problem. I knew some people are different than other people, and the other thing was, growing up in Boston area in the late 70s and early 80s, there were, I think I've said this before, there were 2 kinds of alcoholics, and we had a bit of a family bar room. There were the ones who still drank and the ones who didn't drink anymore, but they still came to the bar.
Right.
Because where else are you going to go? Right. And so anyway, you could kind of start to see those things, and my dad was a problem drinker for a long time, and so the story behind that story is that I get popped with this fairly long list of charges, and there's a family attorney who's a friend of my mother's for other purposes generally, but James A. Shannon, and Jim says he'll defend me, and I didn't know this, but so this would be 1980, and Jim was turned 40 years sober in the course of my knowing him. So,
oh wow,
he was probably 7 years sober in 1980. I mean, he was on the short list.
Okay,
and
he knew the people.
Yeah, I mean, he got sober like during the Second World War. He got sober in the early 40s.
Okay,
and so, cut to the chase. Jim says, I go, we're in with the judge, and he's addressing the judge, and it turns into from Your Honor to Tony, this young man, and blah, blah, blah. And they were in the program together.
The judge and your
judge
attorney.
And my attorney. So he makes the suggestion, the judge signs off, and so I got to go to 2 meetings a year for the next year. So, and meetings at that, so it'd be 1980. I mean, a meeting at that point in time was, a lot of 75-year-old guys chain smoking, and a lot of sit down, shut up, kid, you know what the fuck you're talking about anyway. And but it was great because I learned a lot. I knew where to go. Once the meeting was done, I could go, drinking with my buddies and fill them in on, the problem they were going to have in the future and how plainly obvious it was to me. But point being is that so by the time, like when I left college, and you drink through college like a lunatic, and everybody else does, so nobody notices.
Yeah, right.
And then you keep doing it after college, and you're like, oh, this is a problem. And so I realized, in the first 6 months out of college, having a job as a school teacher, that this isn't going to work. Like, I cannot get hammered every night. And so I started to go to a couple meetings. I'm 22, 23 years old, and I stopped drinking completely for the first time at 23 for probably a year.
Wow. Okay.
And then I left that job and went back. That was up in New Hampshire. I went back to Boston, and hilarity ensued. But
for how long?
From 23 to 26, I got back into the bar business. I hit it pretty hard.
Was that the family business?
Yeah, it was. Okay. And then, we were all in it. My brothers and sisters were all kind of in that business. Right. So not only did you work in that business, but you were in it all day. You hung around in it. Everybody you knew and hung out with.
Nothing abnormal going on.
No, and there were a lot of things going on, including alcohol, and so
it's a rough and nasty business, man.
Well, and being up all night is just what you do, right? Yeah. So so we'd party all night and shoot pool and throw darts, and there was a point at which I think I quit drinking because drinking was the problem. So I'll just do cocaine. This will be excellent.
Right.
And so anyway, at 26, and the irony of this is my dad sobered up at like 63 after a 45-year Hall of Fame career.
Okay. So how old were you at that time then?
I was 26.
Okay.
And so I came dragging ass into him, and he was like 2 years sober.
Okay.
A year or 2 years sober.
Still figuring shit out.
Yeah. And, said, I need help. And he made the calls, got me in,
God bless him.
off I went to one of the nastiest rehabs you've ever seen. Just really rough, really, really rough. When you have no insurance and no money, the state provides some interesting facilities. So anyway, I did that.
At least you could get in back then.
Yeah. And it was actually great because I came out, I'd scared myself pretty good, got sober, stayed sober. Actually, the thing that was amazing was I got out, and a person I knew in rehab, we ended up roommates, and she was actually hooked up with a bunch of people who were pretty seriously sober and fell in with this group and had a sponsor, went to meetings all the time, changed, did what they say, right? I changed everything about my life. I still worked in the bar business, but I stopped associating with all those people, started associating with these people, got sober, started studying for the GMAT, got a normal girlfriend, applied to business school, went to business school, went through business school, got married, got a great job.
And this is all while you're sober.
All sober. But what happened was over the course of those moves and all of these things happening, I didn't have time. I didn't think I had time for meetings. And
you've got enough meetings logged. You've got enough of.
I got this.
Yeah, I got
I'm good.
I'm good now.
I'm good. Yeah. And
ding ding.
And then you get busy in their job, and kids start showing up, and all those other things start showing up, and eventually.
Were you becoming a raging asshole at that point? Had that?
That certainly was part of it. Okay. I don't know that I ever stopped that.
Okay. It was just part of that was the package.
Yeah. Well, it was just. I think the culture of people I grew up in and amongst was, fuck you was a familiar form of greeting.
Exactly. It was sort of a compliment as well as sort of like a verbal hug.
Yeah. It was. It was just. Yeah. It was not a kind environment. So.
I get you.
Anyway, ultimately. One business trip somewhere down the line where I didn't want to explain to anybody I don't drink. I had a drink, and that started this slow progression of that road warrior thing. Because I had a life established, right?
Yeah.
My wife knew I was an alcoholic. I didn't drink. My friends knew I was, my friends at home knew I was an alcoholic and didn't drink. And so, I had this sort of double life thing going on the road.
Oh my God.
And
that must have been a thrill for a while.
Well, and it took like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years to unravel,
Boy, I bet when it did.
Oh yeah, this was not good. And this is where the word progression comes into the program.
Right. So touch on that a little bit. So you're out there doing this road warrior thing for a few years, and you think you got it. You're good, right? We have this. We always think we're ahead of the curve. We always think we're smarter than everybody around us. So you've got this plan. It seems to be working. Probably not as well as you thought. So when the end started to approach, what was that like for you? How did that actually feel? Did you know you were about to flame out, or did you think that, I'm so far out in front of this thing, it'll never happen to me?
I don't know that I was thinking that far ahead.
Yeah. Because it was just get me to the next airport.
Yeah. Well, what happened though ultimately was, so, that I'll just drink on the road thing just keeps narrowing in. Right. And there's a point in time that I'm like, my pattern for a while became, I'm going to leave the office. There's a shithole bar that pours the nastiest drink you've ever seen in your life. And I'm talking about a pint glass, right?
Just
with
a swill.
Straight vodka and a splash of soda on top. I will drink 2 or 3 of those in like 12 minutes.
Right.
And then I'll go home, stumble through dinner, maybe fall asleep on the couch for a minute. And then I may have to go back to the office because, it's just a lot to do. And so, what I mean? These leaky little progressions start occurring. And it just got worse and worse. Next thing you know, you're in the garage, chugging out of a bottle.
Right.
And I'm just tired, And so ultimately, my wife had enough of that shit and threw me out.
How'd she find out?
Well, because that was the thing, right? So progression, interesting thing about progression.
Yeah, talk on that.
Is, one of the things I found was, you're always searching for sort of that buzz spot, right?
Yep.
If, just right here. And then obviously that's impossible. But what also happened was, and I think there's physiology behind, your liver metabolizing alcohol changes, but it lost all its predictability.
Right.
Like I could drink a fifth of vodka and walk a yellow line, or I could have 2 drinks and be speaking in tongues, and you don't know which one's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So you can't play the game the way you were playing the game. You play the game I'm just a little tired, or this or that, or I'm going to bullshit my way through. I'm not shit faced, right? And there's no doing it now because you're just you're fucking asleep in the bushes in front of the house, and that's a little hard to explain, right? So anyway,
so this is kind of where it led for you.
Yeah. And so my now ex-wife suggested, that perhaps I find other accommodations, and which I did. And the irony of that was that she said, it's been like 30 days, and she goes, well, why don't you come back to the house? And I go, I'm good, really. I think this program's working for me right now. And I did not come back.
Were you still drinking then?
Well, so now what I got.
So when you were asked to leave and you got your own accommodations, did you continue to drink at that point, or were you like?
I did for a while, and then I got sober.
Okay.
And
how old are you at that point? What is this?
33, 4.
Okay. And young kids?
Yeah, I mean the kids are. Oh gosh, well maybe I was a little older than that because they were 8 and 4, 5.
All right. So they remember that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then it just there was a good solid period of I could put together like I've said before I got enough 30-day chips to start running a casino. I just couldn't hold it together, and that's the thing about relapse. I think that's really really hard is getting sober the 2nd, 3rd, 8th, 12th time. Seems to get harder and harder.
What do you think or feel or know that there was like a common thread between each one? Or was it just?
Yeah, no, I mean, the common thread is well, I think at this point, I've come to find that having gone through the steps for real. And I went through the steps, did 4 steps, did 9 steps, a couple of times with really solid sponsors, but I don't know that I ever, got to the core.
This is just something I got to do.
And there was, there were things that didn't make the list.
Right.
And
that one, we don't need that one.
Can't do that,
Yeah, you can't shortchange it.
And I don't think, for me, you may have heard me say this before, but, to go to the literature, it's 1B. 1B is a motherfucker, right? So there are 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not control our drinking. B, that no human power could relieve our suffering. C, that God could and would if he were sought, right?
Right.
B is the motherfucker in that sense, right? Because to get maybe a little deep on this.
Go.
Fundamentally, the concept I was raised with was depend on no one, trust no one.
Right.
Because they will disappoint you. They will somewhere between, inadvertently disappoint you and actively fuck you over.
Right. And that's such a common adage, I think, for so many people. Like, you can do it yourself. All you need is you.
Yeah.
And, well, if you're a fuck up, then, yeah, well, my son is a good kid. He's just a fuck up of a drunk.
Right. Well, and I think at that point, I don't know, I guess on some level, I had a bad habit of taking a certain amount of credit for my own success, which I could put together, like I clean up really nicely.
Yes, you do.
And I get confused about what's the source of this, quote unquote success in whatever context you want to measure it in. Mm-hmm. And, I thought I did it. I thought, yeah, this is me. Mm-hmm. I have managed to overcome these immense obstacles, and it's utter bullshit, but it was a story I was telling myself,
Yes, the story we tell ourselves.
And so I think that was really, you couple that with this idea that you can't depend on other people. So you want me to what?
Yeah.
You want me to, put my faith in a higher power who's going to do what exactly? That seems like crazy talk.
Yeah. You want me to wake up in the morning, get dressed, and then just go outside?
Yeah. And that other piece, the idea that, I'll do the best that I can.
Yeah.
We'll let the chips fall where they may.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, I'm good. I'm covered. Somebody's going to handle this action. Somebody's going to take my action on the back end of this conversation. You know what I mean? That is not my experience walking around.
Uh-huh.
And so there's no way I'm and it was deep down somewhere that I just was not willing to let go.
It's like in your DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, at least in my experience and observation in people, and you kind of back this up, is that a lot of people that suffer from addiction have these environments that they come from that have created these challenges for them in order to overcome the obstacle of addiction. Like, because I try to preach that you might be able to get sober on your own, but you certainly are not going to stay sober on your own. That you need to have some kind of community, a group of people, whatever, because you're not going to do it on your own. And that is really very difficult for people to get to, that giving up of control, right? And it sounds like that was kind of like a big struggle for you.
Well, and it's the realization that what you said, right? The giving up of control.
Yeah.
It's built on this concept that you had some. Like, show me the evidence around that one. Right.
Right.
But like I said, I thought I did, which,
I think people have written books about that.
Right? Like, on honest appraisal, it becomes very apparent that you didn't have any control over anything.
No.
But, some of that evidence, right, is because there is some evidence that if it's the story of the director, right? If I squeeze hard enough, I can get a drop out of this turnip, right? I mean, I can force a level of control in the short term that, gives credence to my theory that in the long term, this puzzle is all solvable by me alone.
Right.
And
if I spend every moment, an ounce of energy I have throughout the day, I can beat this.
Well, and take no hostages in the course of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing.
That's the other thing. Like, fuck you, get out of my way.
The wake of destruction.
Oh my God, man!
The pile of bodies.
It's vast. It's like the catacombs.
and so, it really. I mean, at the end of the day, trust is a really hard concept to learn.
How did you learn that? What got you to that point? Was it just, had you finally just been beaten down?
I think the phrase is beaten into a state of reasonableness, right?
Everything you tried did not work.
There's just nothing left.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm, so it's 8 years now. So, there's ones and twos here and there, and then there was like a 9, and then there were, there's a series of 2s and 3 years sober.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting. The other thing, I think there's the idea of, giving over of control or accepting the notion that you don't have any, and that you're going to need to rely on other people, and you're going to have to trust that if you make this exchange, because the idea of, I call it surrender for the win, right? The idea that total surrender is the thing that sets you free. I mean, the irony loop of, you have lost your choice, right? You've lost free will with regard to drugs and alcohol. You have no choice. You have no control over this any longer. Something else is dictating your behavior and your actions. You've lost the power of choice. And then if you give up control, you will get the power of choice back. How the fuck does that algebra work?
It doesn't.
You know what I mean?
It's beyond all logic. That's why people can't stick with it, I
Right.
think. And you mentioned something just a moment ago. When I make this exchange, in your mind, what are you exchanging?
I think it's that, right? You give up the notion of control in order to get the power of choice back. I have no power over my own choices. I've effectively lost free will. And, you surrender to something and say, I have no control over this thing. You take it. And somewhere down the line, you get control back, because what I get control back of is I get to choose, not to get too literary about it, right? But I get to choose to maintain a fit spiritual condition, which is, really fancy pants language for, all the things we do, right? It's actually being honest. And I think honesty is one of those really interesting points, because
It's very interesting.
Honesty to me was either something, I didn't even have a casual passing with, because you ask me what time it is, I'll lie.
Oh yeah. What color is the sky?
Yeah.
It's orange.
And it's, so I'll lie just about anything as when you've lied about something and you're like, why did I lie about that? I have no reason to lie about that.
All the fucking time.
And
makes no sense.
So, you start to take on the concept of, well, I'm just going to be honest about this. And I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to read this thing. I'm going to say this prayer. I'm going to call this guy. I'm going to go to, you know what I mean?
What an idea.
Yeah.
A concept.
Accountability is...
I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do.
Well, I think the other thing is, too, it's recognition of the fact that, the rules do apply to me.
They
like,
do.
Gravity is real for you, Sean. Because I really do. I think you live in this bubble where the rules don't apply to me.
Oh yeah.
And
because we're fucking 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and you put a few drinks in us, look at all you wusses out there dropping like flies. Look at me, man.
Relapse for quitters, man.
Yeah.
But and you've got data points to point to about it, right? You dodged the bullet here, you bullshitted your way through that. The book says it. A lot of us have special talents, but you do, right? If you've developed some sort of notion that I made this happen, I did this, I did that, and you're really responsible for that, and it's not, right? It's a confluence of a lot of fortuitous circumstances.
And luck.
Yeah. 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 And so I think that, and that's the hard part to remember sometimes. It's the irony of one of the things I love about the Big Book is it just contradicts itself all the way through. Like, and we are recovered, but really, all we have is 24 hours. Wait a minute, which one is it?
And I have a reprieve for 24 hours, baby.
But it's true, right? Yeah. I mean, and it just takes a minute to understand it.
Yeah, if you made it through the day without drinking, you're recovered.
Yeah,
but you got to start over tomorrow.
I mean, I think there's somewhere in the reference in the somebody's done the count that says, I think the book uses the word recovery like 3 times and the word recovered 140 or something. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, right.
But that's not it, right? I think that was the problem. Is I thought I had recovered and I thought I had done something to do so, and it's not. Yeah, it's not.
I take a little. I mean, this is my own personal beef. Is that you get around people and they're like, yeah, I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic. And I'm like, I mean, everybody, we're all different. We're all wired differently. We're our own beautiful individuals. But, are you really recovered? Because if you're like me, you're never going to be recovered.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so recovered, I think, is a really dangerous word. And that's one of the other things I found with the Big Book. You've got a lot of those people who will tell you, if you're going through it with folks, and you start looking up words, and I think I'm a smart guy. I was an English major. I was an English teacher. I think I know what words mean. You look them up and you find out, motherfucker, that's not what actually that meant. Son of a bitch. I don't think that word means what you think it means, right?
Right.
And
you're from Boston too. You guys talk funny.
So, recovered, I mean, the idea that it can mean, right now, but it's not going to last. You got to keep doing what you're doing.
That's a really good way to reframe it. Maybe I should, when they're in that moment and a person introduces themselves as a grateful, recovered alcoholic, I probably should cut them a little slack because at that moment, they are.
Right.
They are.
Tomorrow morning, I'm a lunatic,
Yeah, but let's not talk about the morning times. So you mentioned you had several strings of you put together a few years, but there was one number in there that I don't think I knew about, but you had 9 years and then.
So when I originally, when I quit drinking, coming out of rehab at 26, I had a good long run.
Okay. So that was the 9 years.
Yeah.
And so that led into your work, which led into the Road Warrior, which then was the demise.
Exactly.
Okay.
It took me, by the time I got my act together, studied for graduate school, went through graduate school, blah, blah, blah. I was, some number of years, some small number of years, 3 or something into a real job, real career kind of thing before. Like I said to you earlier, I finally said no thanks. I finally didn't say no thanks when somebody pushed a drink my way. And it was that,
that is such a.
It's right out of literature, right? We do not have a defense against the first drink. And
we don't. And that moment, we're all susceptible to it. I don't know if you want to call it a case of the fuckets, but it's literally a switch. It's just like a flash and it's there. And so what was it your travel that led to a lot of the relapses because it was such an
easy opportunity for it to exist in? I mean, what
was there something?
I just got away from everything and everyone.
You were just out on your own.
Yeah, well, and
left to our own devices.
I wasn't going to meetings. I didn't have a sponsor.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing any of the things to keep, my mental health where it should be. Meanwhile, I'm up to my eyes in, job pressure, small kids, mortgage payments, and
you have no outlet. You're not utilizing anything.
No, I'm working, pick a number, 75 hours a week or whatever
Jesus
it is.
Christ.
And, I folded like a lawn chair under the right circumstance.
Yeah.
And
so what do you think then, as someone who has had multiple relapses and found a way to get now where you are with another 8 years under your belt. And from what I can tell, I think this one's gonna stick. Let's not get too far out there. But we hear stories from friends or family members about someone, a loved one or a person that's close to them that's like, well, they just can't get their shit together. They can't stay sober. They keep trying. I send them to rehab and they keep fucking up and they keep, going back out there. Like, it's really not necessary. It's not our part as people in a recovery community or sober community to say, well, have you ever considered this? But maybe this is where they are and this is why they're going back out there. But, two dudes that have been working on sobriety for a while now, if somebody's like listening to this, that's having a hard time staying sober and thinking about relapsing or has relapsed and continues to relapse, what would you say to them as something that like, it's okay, man. Like there was there, I get, how would I frame it? Did you ever feel guilt or shame that led to that first drink?
No, I mean, for me, it's after the fact, not before. I don't, and maybe it's because I haven't felt it yet, but I never felt triggered by, oh, this thing happened. It reminded me of that thing. Okay. And now I need to drink because I can't deal with it.
Right. So more like overall control then.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to your point of, how do you tell somebody that's going to die, they're going to die?
Yeah.
To me, there is sort of a piece of honesty in it. And, in the new kindler, gentler AA, there is, we don't say things that are that harsh to one anymore. I mean, I remember
That's
going,
true. Yeah.
I'm walking into AA in 1980 as a 16-year-old.
Yeah. Shut the fuck up.
Sit down, shut the fuck up. You don't know anything. And, you're going to die is what they would tell you. And, and you see it in people. I mean, we've seen it enough times. Somebody comes in, they're looking rough. They bullshit their way through a couple of meetings. You never see them again, or you find out, they found them later or whatever it is.
So many times.
I mean, I really envy the people that get sober young. The idea of, I don't know, I'm just so happy for them that not only the misery you didn't have to go through, but I want to extract from their brain, what was it that got you to figure it out?
Yeah. Shit, man. I was at a meeting. This is pre-pandemic, and there was a girl there. She was fucking 14 and figured it out. No one sent her there.
Right.
At 14, she had the wherewithal to be like, whoa, I need to get some help. It's neither here nor there. It just popped in my head. But if someone asked you, like, hey, my kid can't stay sober, and they keep telling me, I'm trying, I'm working at it, I'm trying, and they keep fucking up and they keep going back out there. So any suggestion you could make to somebody? Or do you just say, hey, man, I hope he makes it. I'm sorry to hear that.
No, I mean, I think it's I mean, for those people, I know there's lots of ways to get and stay sober, but AA is the only one that's worked for me.
Yeah. 12 steps work for us, but there's many other ways.
And I think it's because the people in it and I'm not a big fan of the scared straight bullshit, but what I am a fan of is people who can look right through you and look right at you and say, you are entirely full of shit. You are talking the talk to keep me off your ass. Mm-hmm. And you are thinking about, well, when the hell can I get the hell out of here? And when, I will admit, for me, even in periods where I was sober for a long time, I never gave up the idea that I had control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can sort this out.
Yep. And when I do, this is what I'm going to drink.
And the crazy part of that is, I mean, I've buried a lot of people who, went to their grave with that idea, and family members, and like, I don't know how to see it any more clearly than that, right? You watch a sibling do that to themselves. And, it's not like I got it immediately. I had to beat my own self into the state of reasonableness. It's hard to see through another person, but I think it is in confronting honestly the idea of, it's the self-reliance thing, it's so hard to take away. For me, it's so hard to take away from the core of who I am, that to separate the idea that with this thing, self-reliance just has no bearing on the problem.
Nope.
No bearing whatsoever.
No, it does not.
And to reconcile, there are lots of other things that self-reliance can be awfully, awfully helpful with.
For sure.
Persistence and all those things. It's just not this one.
Something about recovery does teach, at least it taught me. My story is that sobriety, and especially over the past few years, it has taught me self-reliance. Like, I relied on, codependency, like, hello, it's like stamped on my forehead. But over the past few years, and most of this has to do with, the group that we have, that I've been able to create that I can do this. But me doing it, though, involves having other people around and to help me out. Like, a big part of my self-reliance is being able to ask for help and be cool with it.
Yeah. And somewhere underneath that is trust. Like, I'll talk about our small group here. There were people that I trust in that circle, that I trust at a level that I don't trust anybody else, but people from when I was a young guy.
Right.
My best friend from junior high school and high school was in town this weekend. We went out to dinner Sunday night, and there's that small group of people in my life that you call in the middle of the night and say, I need you to meet me here and bring a shovel. And they do.
And they do.
And
it's good to
that's,
I know I could call.
Yeah, but I haven't, outside of, a handful of people in the recent past in sobriety, I haven't made friendships like that since the age of, 15, 16, 17.
Absolutely.
At the oldest, right?
Yeah.
Because you have some shared experience. And I think that's what it is the truly, honestly shared experience where there's no bullshitting, and, that bridge creates an alliance that you can rely upon, where you can say things without any judgment, without anything else, that you're just not gonna, I'm trying to picture the the insane thoughts that go through my head that I can say to you, that you can play back a punchline on, and you think about where else could I walk in and say that? Right. And, because, I walk into my boss's office and say that, they're going to call security.
I've tried that. It does not go well.
That is not going to play out well. Oh, really, Sean? Is that how you feel? Oh, okay. Listen, I'm just going to step out for a moment. I'll be back with the HR people in a minute.
There's a banker box over there. Go ahead and use that. So before we wrap up, tell me, all right, so, you've got all these 30-day chips, but here you are now. What's life like? What's being sober like?
And I think that's part of what the other side gets you in terms of, I don't want to sneak out and, have a drink and have that fun, wild time that I harbored, right? I want what I have right now.
Yeah.
Like what I have right now is great.
pretty good.
It's one of the things that we've talked about is I've had to pick up the radio frequency for contentment and happiness because it's not a frequency I recognize. Like
Right.
it's taken a long time to go, oh, I'm not bored. I'm just happy.
Yeah.
Because, it's not 50,000 volts, it took me a while to feel what that looked like.
Right. I can go outside and sit and do absolutely nothing.
And it's great.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
I can do that, but man, if I don't watch it, that'll go away.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. And the difference between, like I did it a couple times, beautiful today, right?
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Walked the dogs a couple times between meetings because I work from home now. And it was fantastic, right? But in the wrong circumstance, without the right framework around me, I'll be dragging the goddamn dog down the street by the leash, going, come on, you, right? And that's my whole dog God thing. I mean,
Yeah.
dog is God to me because they're just like, they just laugh at your plan.
They do.
You go,
Mine,
no, we're going to look at this bush for a while and we're going to enjoy the bush.
We are. And mine today, had to stop about every 25 feet just to squirt. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like dragging her. And then I realized, this, maybe I should stop every 25 feet.
Enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride. 25. Sometimes, man, sobriety is 25 feet at a time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you so much. This was really great.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate another bite at the apple here. So
that's great. I have some more ideas on it.
Great.
This is not the last we've got of you. All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
How about that? What a great conversation with a great person. Thank you, Sean, very much for taking the time and to being so open and honest and sharing your experiences here. Means a lot to me, and I hope that people come and listen to this because we're doing really good work here. All right. And if you happen to like what we're doing here, be sure and rate us on Spotify and on Apple Podcast and wherever else you might be listening to this thing, because it is worldwide, people. And if you have any feedback, suggestions, or if you know somebody that just secretly wants to ask some questions that they might be curious about, drop me a line, send me an email. The email address is notalltherepod@gmail.com. Again, that is notalltherepod@gmail.com. All right. Thank you for listening. It was a great show. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be seeing you around. Take care. Bye.